button on? Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you? You're good?
Thanks for having us.
Good, good. Well, I wanted to just say this morning, first of all, this is just a little on background that I know yesterday we sent out the media advisory, whatever you call it, and it caused a bit of a kerfuffle. And one of the things that I'd like to start doing, if it's good for you all, is just to have sort of regular media availability. You know, often you all, you're just trying to get your story on the air or your story written for the paper, and so you grab me when going in or coming out, and that probably isn't the best for you or for me. And so what I'd like to start doing is doing media availability. If you're available, come. Too. So that's really what this is about today, is just maybe a way of being more open to your questions and having a interaction with you all. So, of course, there have been a lot of big things that are going on in the city, and we thought that maybe some of you had questions about those things. And so this will be an opportunity for you to ask those questions as well. There's one thing that I sort of have on my agenda for this morning, and that is to talk a minute about the trash task force, which some of you have heard about and written about. And what this is dumping is a problem in our city, dumping in alleys. I know some of you have driven alleys and taken pictures. And so one of the things that we have done is we've put over 100 cameras in the alleys over this last year. And just for your information, we have since January we have issued 208 summonses for illegal dumping. I think that's a pretty significant dent. I don't think it's certainly all of the problem, but we've issued 208 tickets. Those 208. 58 have been found guilty or pleaded guilty, and so those folks are paying $500 fines apiece for each incident, and they've 100 hours of community service. And what we think is that they won't be dumping in our alleys again if once they've had to pay that $500 or had to do that community service, and that will cut down on the amount of junk dumped in our alleys, which helps with the cleanliness all the way around. It's pretty interesting. Of the 208 summonses, about half of them were issued to city residents, maybe doing work for someone else, whether it was cleaning out their basement or cleaning out a garage, and they took the stuff and dumped it in alleys. About a quarter of them, the summonses were issued to St. Louis County residents, and about a quarter of them were to surrounding areas, Bonne Terre, Franklin County, St. Charles County, all around the area. So what we suspected, which is that a lot of what's dumped in our city and in our alleys is not being done by St. Louis City residents, turned out to be, of course, accurate. Part of the way that we were able to issue these summonses is from help from residents. We always are trying to engage residents, whether it's in turning in folks that are dumping or whether it's in turning in tips for crimes that they have seen. And so today, in October, we're going to be issuing checks to those residents. With this here, I'm going to turn this around if I can without knocking it all over. There we go. So we are going to be issuing 18 checks for $100 apiece in October to those 18 people who helped the trash task force actually issue those summonses and get those convictions. Now, you'll notice that this says to anonymous, and that's because, of course, we know who the people are. We're issuing them a $100 check, but we are not going to make their names public because they probably don't want their neighbors to know that they're turning in folks that are dumping in the alleys. So we're going to respect that. So this is two anonymous trash tipsters. It'll be $18 $100 checks that will be going out this month for them helping us to catch folks that are doing the illegal dumping. And that'll make our city cleaner overall, and also um, notice to those people that are thinking about dumping in our alleys. So that's really the biggest topic that I wanted to visit with you about today. Of course, I know we've made a lot of announcements in the last few weeks. We've announced MLS. We've announced the new convention center. A little bit ago, we announced that the city has had $1.14 billion in construction permits that were issued as of the end of June 30th. About $8 billion in construction happening in the Central Corridor either has been completed recently, is under construction, or is planned to be completed. So if you look around St. Louis, what you'll see is a lot of cranes, but drive up and down the streets, and what you'll see is a lot of dumpsters. And I'm fond of saying that I love the sight of a construction dumpster. If it's in front of a house, if it's in front of a commercial building, what that means to me is that those folks, that owner, who maybe is putting in a new kitchen, or maybe they're putting a roof on a building, they have the confidence to spend their money and invest in our city. And so we are thrilled with all the economic development activity that has happened. So there are probably other things that are on your mind, and I'm happy to take some questions today. And this will be you don't have to ask every question you ever had today. This will be one of, we'll try to do this again in a couple of weeks. We're not going to set an exact time for it. We'll send you a notice again because we don't know what's going on, 2 weeks from today, for example. But we will continue to do it periodically, which we think is just a better way to interact with you all, help you do your job, and help us get our messages out. So.
Since you talked about trash, there's been still some concern about trash pickup around the city. Is there any movement on getting those trucks fixed so they can get out and start picking up trash? Since people are also
Yeah. Well, we are and have been for about the last month running enough trucks every day in order to pick up 100% of the dumpsters. So there are not any routes that are being missed right now. And what you've seen is a significant decline in the complaints. Get all of the trash, of course, but we're picking up all the trash, solid waste, all the recycle, and all of the yard waste. Now, we've done that by really working with getting some of the trucks that were broken down, working with our suppliers, working with mechanics to get those back up and running. And we also have taken delivery on a few new trucks, and we have more that are coming in between now and the end of the year or the first quarter of next year. So we expect that we're going to have a fleet by the first quarter of 2019 where we won't be putting them together with, what do they call it, chicken wire and baling tape or something. So, yeah. So that crisis, and I do believe it was a crisis, that crisis has been addressed, and it was due to the hard work of a lot of people in the city, both mechanics, our suppliers, and also due to the hard work of our drivers, who are still working a split shift of sorts so that we can run enough trucks every day to hit all of the routes. So we're hopeful that soon our drivers will be able to go back. We appreciate their being inconvenienced, if you will, in order to pick up everyone's trash.
On the issue of development, you said there's been $8 billion in the Central Corridor. Is that a sign that maybe incentives need to be changed to get some of that development going north and south of what we consider?
Sure. Well, Rachel, probably know that there is a new map out which has been adopted by the Board of Aldermen, or is in the process of being adopted by the Board of Aldermen, in order to really scale back incentives in areas that don't need as much incentive. And in some areas, there won't be any incentives. Now, this map actually addresses residential properties under $1 million. It's the first step. We are looking at incentive reform in a major way. And of course, what we always want to do is give as little incentive as possible and still have the project happen. And that is a little and a little bit of science. And so we are making changes there every day.
So when you say if you're looking to do it in a major way, this is going beyond the map that's being adopted by resolution? Are you looking at legislation, strategies? What's that sort of big time incentive?
Well, I think it is just a more critical look on a project-by-project basis. And I think if you talk to developers, they will tell you that, of course, a more critical look in terms of the project actually is and how much incentive it needs in order to happen. So.
Can you address the recent carjackings that are happening more island? Do you still discuss this key strategy with the regional task force? And you said at one point that it was a city problem per se. Do you still hold to that?
Well, I think it's a problem all over our region. Happens in St. Louis County. That's not an excuse. Uh, we have a situation where, and this has developed over the last few years, and I think you all know this is the first year that we have tracked carjacking separately. So we actually know the numbers. We have a carjacking task force, and it's St. Louis County, it's St. Louis City, FBI, ATF, St. Clair County. So everyone working together, because carjackings are, if it were only a problem in the city, we wouldn't, have a task force that's multi-jurisdictional. You know that I don't know if you were here at that time, but maybe 10 years ago, some of you who were here when we had a big stolen car problem. Just some folks remember that. Well, you stole a car by, I don't know, breaking the window, sticking a screwdriver in the ignition and starting the car, or hot wiring it, or whatever. Well, now with newer cars, you have to have that key fob, and you have a push button start. And so now, in order to get the car, to steal a car, you have to get it while it's running, and that is very worrisome and very dangerous. Because often there are guns used in that carjacking. And so, of course, it's serious. We had 4 a few days ago. 2 of those have been solved. Arrests have been made in those 2 cases. The chief can give you all the details, carjacking by carjacking, but it is serious. We are concerned about it, and really part of our message is to say to people, don't make yourself an opportunity. It's never the victim's fault, ever. But don't make yourself an opportunity. I do it myself sometimes. I sit in my car and I finish an email, or I finish a text message. I don't maybe move as quickly as I should into or out of the car. So we are saying to people, be aware of your surroundings, of course, and don't sit in your car and do your text messages.
Mayor, on gun crimes, Public Safety Director Edwards recently suggested to the Board of Aldermen raising the mandatory minimum from 15 to 25 years for gun crimes. And I was surprised there was a huge pushback on Facebook and social media saying there's no deterrent value there. They'll just flood the jails with more people. What are your thoughts? Up the ante, crimes with a gun, is that going to make the street safer, or is that going to be unfair?
Well, here's actually the situation, Kevin. His suggestion was for a mandatory minimum on a charge called armed criminal action. So that armed criminal action, the mandatory minimum right now is 3 years. So it's not 15, it's 3 years. And there was a suggestion that it should be more. Should it be 15, or should it be 10, or should it be, He suggested that as a new standard. Yes, correct. But currently it's 3 years. Okay. I missed the question then. I think 3 years is a short period of time for committing a crime with a gun, where you injure someone or kill someone. I think that's a short period of time. I don't know what the number should be, but I do know that crimes with guns are very serious, and our obligation is to try to protect our citizens, and that's the obligation as well. So I think we're going to be in a big conversation about this. He suggested this, but of course it has to be done by the state. So there'll be much more conversation about this.
Do you think there's a deterrent value? Because that's the thing that surprised me. So many people believe there is not a deterrent value to having a longer sentence here.
And are those law enforcement people?
It seems like it's a lot of progressive tweeters.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we do need to rely on law enforcement for that, and we're in conversations with Jeff Jensen, who's the U.S. Attorney. You probably know him. We're in conversations with state legislature. Mandatory minimums are controversial. What we're attempting to do here is to have some deterrent for folks, and some of this goes back to some practices from years ago. So I don't know if 3 years is enough if you shoot and injure someone. That's a question. It'll be a question to legislators, and a question to all of us, really. We don't want any more people in jail or in prison than need to be there. We want our jails and prisons to have as few people as possible in here. In fact, in the city, the city operates 2 jails, you know that. They are for pretrial detainees. Today, or maybe it was yesterday, I think we had 1,256 people in our 2 jails, both MSI and CJC. That's down a couple hundred people from where we were just a couple of years ago. So we have 2 Fuse fellows. Some of you may, I don't know if anyone's done a story about this or not, but Fuse fellows who are, one of them is looking at bail reform. They just started the 1st of October. One's looking at bail reform, and one is looking at a criminal justice coordinating council to try to bring the parties together. You know that the mayor's office has nothing to do with who's in our jails. Police make arrests, circuit attorney decides who gets charged. Between circuit attorney's office and the judges, they set bonds. We don't have anything to do with that. But we can use our office as somewhat of a bully pulpit, or the conversation about let's only have the people in our jails who need to be there, and not anybody else. So bringing all those parties together to talk about that and to coordinate, I think, will be a good thing. A number of cities have done that, which is why we applied for the Fuse Fellows to be assigned here. So we actually were assigned 3 Fuse Fellows, one for bail reform, one for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and one to help us increase minority hiring in our police department. The person who was selected for that position ended up not being able to come, and so we're in the process of selecting a 3rd person. All 3 of those are big subjects. All 3 of them we need the best minds on to do the best job we can.
I know you said that you're not sure that a public vote is necessary for potentially privatizing St. Lucie Airport, but now that there's actually a bill before the Board of Aldermen that would have a public weigh-in if a lease agreement is reached, would you support that?
I don't think we have anything to vote on right now, so I think it's preliminary. If we had a proposal before us, we maybe should think about that, but I don't think there's anything to vote on right now. The airport process started, I think the date was October 7th, not October, excuse me, August 7th or August 8th, somewhere right in there. 2 months, a little over 2 months into what is an 18 or 24-month process here. We hope and expect in the first quarter of 19 to be able to put out a request for qualifications from people. And there's a working group. Some of you may attend their meetings. They just met yesterday, in fact, but the meetings are posted online as well. And so we're just getting started on that.
But even if there isn't a proposal available, what's wrong with the concept of when there is a proposal, voting on, any proposal that might come up? You don't have to say, there doesn't have to be a proposal to say you need to vote on whatever proposal comes out. So the concept of a public vote on whatever proposal, do you support that?
I think that there are 4 entities that would have to ultimately decide on this. That would be the Board of Aldermen, which they represent the people of St. Louis. That would be the Board of E&A. It would be the FAA and the airlines. So I personally think that those 4 groups will do a good job of evaluating any proposal if we get to the point where we even receive proposals.
Mayor, we put it out to viewers and said, what would you like to ask the mayor? This is from viewers. She says, what are your thoughts and what are your plans for clearing the names of the innocent police officers that have their lives being put in danger by having their names on the list created by Tim Burke?
I believe that is really with the court system right now. I know that the chief and the circuit attorney have met and discussed those folks. Some of those folks no longer work for the police department. I think it's unfortunate that that list has been established, and I think that the circuit attorney and the police department have to work together to figure that out.
As long as I have your attention, tell yourself, when are you going to list the residency rule?
In general, that's an overall question. So some of you know that a few weeks ago, we announced that we were going to issue residency waivers, which is what it's currently called, since we have a residency rule right now, issue residency waivers for up to 50 new police officers, because we're currently down, and this has been the case for the last, year and a half since I've been in office, we're currently down 130, give or take, police officers. We have tried many things, including a new cadet program, to recruit officers. We want to recruit a diverse workforce. So we have lifted the residency requirement. It's a waiver, called a waiver for those 50 officers. The residency requirement is actually in the city charter. And so lifting it isn't entirely, which I believe is the question, isn't under my control. There is a board bill pending at the Board of Aldermen now, which would take it back to the voters and ask the voters, do you want to lift the residency rules? I think there are plenty of people who want to live in the city, that we don't have to require that anymore. We have great neighborhoods here. All of us live in the city. We want to live in the city, and we'll continue to do so. So I personally would favor a lifting of the residency rule, but it isn't my decision.
Across the board for all city employees?
It has to go to a vote of the people, but it isn't my decision. But yes, I support the board bill that puts it before the voters.
Which that board bill would be not just officers,
That's
but
correct.
all city employees.
Correct.
Mayor, about infrastructure, of course, Fox News for days has been doing reports about that situation that deals with people's life. Is there any type of movement on addressing the city's infrastructure? She's only going 14 miles per hour, I believe the information came out.
Yeah, I heard that the police said 14 to 28 or something like that. So that bridge has been there for a long time. Was built to the standards of that time. It is on the list of bridges to be replaced, primarily because of the condition under the bridge, the structure under the bridge, although it has not been deemed to be an emergency yet. Frankly, we need match money to replace that bridge, and we need federal money to replace the bridge. It's on our list. It's something that we are working on, and it's not the only bridge on our list. So the economics of this, I don't know what that bridge would cost to replace it, but it's way into the millions. We could ask Rich Bradley that question, but I'm sure it's at least $10, $20 million to replace that bridge. It will be done. It's been talked about for a while, and it is on the list. It's within the top 5 on the list. So.
On the soccer stadium proposal, have you seen anything concrete yet? And is there anything where if it crossed your desk, it would be, this is a no-go, go back to the table, or I veto it?
Well, what I have seen so far is a good proposal, in my opinion. It's developing, of course. It is give or take, $400 million in money to build a new soccer stadium. It is no TIF by the city. It is, last round with the soccer stadium had the city putting in $4 million per year. So there's none of that. So right now it's $400 million in private money to go into a soccer stadium on a site that is owned by the state, which we hope to own that site. That's still in conversation. The city would continue to get the earnings tax off of the soccer stadium. It would continue to get the sales tax off the soccer stadium. It would be $1.5 million plus per year, and that's numbers are all still being developed. But we would continue to get whatever taxes we earnings tax out of that stadium. There would be, I call it user fees. There would be a SID and a TID and a Port Authority tax put on only the people that are using that stadium. So if you buy a ticket or if you buy a hot dog, or if you buy a T-shirt or whatever. Um, so I think it's an excellent proposal. $400 million in private funding is a very significant proposal. Now, right now, the focus is getting MLS to name St. Louis uh, for the next expansion team, or one of the next two expansion teams. That's the hope. The team is really working hard to make that happen. As long as the field looks a lot like it looks today, I don't see any reason that St. Louis would not love to have a new have a soccer team. I think we're a soccer town. We play soccer. We watch soccer. Now we need to get a soccer team.
Any red lines where would not sign targeted bills?
There's nothing that's been talked about so far that makes me concerned about that.
Any idea when that might become an actual bill?
Uh,
Or we'll see the bills for the cities, everything starts moving.
I don't think we would see that most until we've been named to have a franchise. So. Your morale?
You can throw in your morale too, if you like. But a friend of mine recently went to Denver, and he came home grousing about St. Louis, and he couldn't put his finger on it. But do you have a feeling, is there something wrong in general with the city that you're trying to address? Maybe it's many things put together, but when you look around, just feeling that we aren't what we used to be, that we're circling the drain. Well, how would you rate our morale, and what do you think are the most intractable problems that you're really trying to fix?
Well, those are two different questions. But frankly, I think St. Louisans are too darn humble. We have a lot of great things going on. I just ticked off a number of them: $8 billion in construction, $1.14 billion in building permits. You look at the arts and the cultural institutions that we have here that we're all so proud of. We're proud of our art museum and our zoo. We're proud of Forest Park. We're proud of all of our park system in the city of St. Louis, 109 parks. But when a lot of people say St. Louis, we're really talking more than the city of St. Louis. I think we ought to be much more vocal and talk our own city up a lot more than we do, because we have a lot to be proud of. Most of us who live here think this is a fabulous place to live. Most of us who live here love having all our free cultural institutions. And it's not just the big cultural institutions. We have an incredible arts community here through Regional Arts Commission, who has helped a lot of folks. We had 100 years of the Muni just being celebrated this year. Also, the little theater company, Gaslight Theater. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a great little theater company on Boyle. But there are a lot of those. So between the arts, the hospitals that we have here, the universities that we have here, the great neighborhoods, the great cost of living, I think we ought to be much more positive on ourselves.
Hey, Mayor, just national news going on right now. What's your thoughts on the exposure to CNN?
Well, I heard that this morning when I got up, and I think I read somewhere that yesterday or the day before there was a bomb threat at George Soros' house as well. If I'm correct about that. Well, of course, that's awful. I'm glad the Secret Service apparently intercepted those packages to Obama and the Clintons, and they never, as I understand it, the packages never got to them. It's a very serious situation. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Do you like doing this media availability, or you don't? Yeah? Okay. It's been half an hour. Okay, we